get a lot of questions about the work we call infrastructure building. We began building out this portfolio of work about 15 years ago, but really put a name to it a few years ago because it does have some specifics to it about how we actually go about this work and what we do when we're doing it with whether it's a corporation or government entity, a nonprofit or a philanthropic institution. And I really thank the Mertz Gilmore Foundation and Trellis Stepter, who's a program officer there, because they actually helped us to do many of these projects by inviting us in to do these projects with a number of their grantees. And then the irony is, just a year or so ago, we also got to do it with Mertz Gilmore Foundation team themselves. But this portfolio of work, as we got to doing it so many times and had already done a great deal of it before we started doing it with Mertz, but in the way in which we started talking about it with the Mertz Gilmore Foundation and codifying it is really when it led our team to actually name it as infrastructure building and to create a portfolio of work around it. And now we do it again across corporate, government, nonprofit, and philanthropic. And in this particular project with the Nellie May Education Foundation, just want to talk a little bit about it. It's a current project, so there's nothing to report in terms of where we've ended. But again, just to give some insight and answer your questions about, okay, what's it look like when you get a project going or you get that request? And so in these green case studies, and we call them green because it's the color of the environment, it's the color that's representative of renewal and growth. In these case studies, we get to talk a little bit about projects we've either completed or projects we're currently in. And in this one with Nellie May Education Foundation, it felt like it could be interesting because it also just goes to how we're all in this transformative period. In this case, Dr. Giselle Shorter arrived at Nellie May Education Foundation about a year ago and really now is asked by the board of directors to really think about what's the work look like going forward? Nellie May has always done its work regionally to 6 states in New England, but has always looked to national partners as well and national thought leadership. And Dr. Shorter is no different in really thinking deeply and wanting to have as much breadth and depth in terms of looking at what Nellie May is not only doing currently, but what it could be doing to continue to answer these important questions around public education. So there are multiple ways in which you can go about a project of this sort. And in this particular instance, we sort of started out a little bit wide and now we're beginning to focus. The wide was to look across. We did research for Nellie May Education Foundation for their team, and we looked at foundations across the country to be able to talk to them about the work they are doing, what's been their decision points, big decision points over the last couple of years. Some of that is certainly in reference to COVID, but other things it might be that the foundation was celebrating a big anniversary, or like in the case of Nellie May Education Foundation, having a transition of leadership. And so, what does that look like? What does it give you an opportunity to rethink, to do, to try? What's the research and development you're putting into it? What's your team think about these issues? And that's the kinds of questions we've been asking foundations from around the country. I am so grateful to the colleagues who've talked to us, from Smith Family Foundation to California Community Foundation, the Boston Foundation, Barr Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, all of these incredible entities around the country where their team members were wonderful and said, sure, I'd love to have a conversation, tell you what we've learned, and certainly are asking what Nellie May Education Foundation is learning as well. So we aren't there yet in terms of final report or any of those things in terms of recommendations. But again, I just appreciate when you all ask about what's it like in terms of a new project? What are you doing? What are the kinds of questions you're asking? So for this first part, it was all about asking questions about just that. What's transformation look like for other teams? What are they paying attention to? What's on the horizon? What kinds of trends are they monitoring? How are they staffing up? What are their staff feel about how things are changing respective to their topic? In this instance, we looked at foundations that work on education, like Nellie May Education Foundation, but they also work on other topics, environment. They work on the arts. They're working on elders. We looked at the gamut. We wanted to ask those questions about what they're seeing, because ultimately we know that everything ties together. It's not just education. It's where people live. It's, do they have enough food to eat? Do they have jobs? All of these things tie together. And so it was important to be able to ask a variety of foundation leaders what their what they were focused on, what they were learning, what they have questions about, what they're challenged by, and all of that will go into the work we're doing over the next couple of months with the Nellie May Education Foundation. So more to report later. But Jen, I always appreciate when you ask these great questions about what we're working on and how we get started on a project and what we're trying to think about and what ultimately may come out of the project. We'll report.